Application of payments. Application of payments overall is simply a payment detail code that is being applied to a charge detail code. However, it could also be a negative charge, like a reversal, a cancellation, a reduction against a existing charge, or a payment against a negative payment, such as a reduction in your financial aid award or a reversal of a payment of some sort. When applied in full, a transaction balance will go to zero if it covers the full balance. And then after that, when you're running application of payments, once a balance goes to zero, then those transactions are ignored, and only transactions whose balance is greater than or less than zero will be addressed in the application of payments processing. So that is the basic of what application of payments does. That seems simple, but there are a lot of background information that we go through. So that is what an application of payment is. So the order of your application of payments, and I'm going to pull this over onto this screen here, is this. So here's the order of application. This is how, when you run application of payments, and if you just joined us and you're not on mute, if you don't mind muting, that would be great. Okay, so here's the application of payments. So when you run application of payments processing, whether you run that application of payment online or whether you run it as a mass application of payment, and we'll talk about online versus mass application of payment in a little bit, this is how your sequence flows. So the first thing it's going to do is do direct application. So anything that we call it T-paid. So anything that's T-paid. So if there's a transaction, if number in the transaction paid field, those are always applied first when you're doing application of payments. Direct application using invoice numbers, which is generally your third-party application ones, that, or anybody that has an invoice that you've created, those apply second. Third is your like detail codes within the same term. So tuition goes to tuition, ACTI goes to ACTI, TCKK goes to TCKK, right? If those are any reversals. Then it's based on your priority codes, then refund to any priority, but again, that's based on your parameters, and we'll talk about those later, and then negative charge to any priority, also based on your parameters, okay? So that's the order in which, when you run either an online application of payment or a mass application of payment, batch application of payment, that's how they go. And it goes on to say that the sequence number assumes the priority, payment priority is valid when matched against a charge priority or the oldest term, oldest effective date, or the lowest transaction number. So I highlighted the next section in yellow, and I'm going to read it. And the reason for that is we recently had this with another college, and it took a minute to figure out actually what was happening, why it wasn't applying the way that the college thought it should and the way that I kind of thought it should. So this says, if the payment is a result of an exemption or a third-party payment. So if you think about third-party payments when you're running your contracts, when the third-party payment hits the TASREV account, what source code does that come in at? It comes in as a C, right, for contract. So that's very important in this little section right here. An additional requirement must be met that during the application process, in order for the payment to apply to a charge transaction, the source code of the charge transaction must match the source code associated with the valid detail code coming from TSA CONT or your TSA EXPT, which is your exemptions, so contracts and exemptions. So the example of this is if you have a payment code that is out there that was put on by your third-party contract. So say you have an X1TP that was put onto the TASREV account, and then you had to back that off. So normal circumstances when you have to back off a payment that's been put on by a third-party contract is you go back to the contract, you delete the student off the contract, and then you run TSRT bill again, and then that will put a reversing X1TP out there with a C source code. In this particular college's case, someone else that didn't handle third-party contract was the one that did the reversal. Well, they just manually did the reversal from the TASREV screen. Well, when you do something from the TASREV screen, as we talked about in earlier sessions, that source code is a T. A T is in Tom, right? So then when the person running application of payments ran the application of payments process, the original X1TP with the C source code was not marrying to the X1TP with the T source code as we thought it should, but we weren't paying attention to the source codes. We were only looking at the fact that this is the same detail code, like detail codes within the same term should apply what? First, right? That's how we think it should apply. After T-paying and after invoices, like terms within the same detail code up here at the top is what's supposed to apply, and it wasn't happening that way. The reason why it wasn't is because the source codes were not the same. So keep that in mind when you're working on exemptions and third-party contracts, that when you're backing off stuff, you have to go back to the third-party contract and back that off so that the source code can be the same. Otherwise, you'll have to T-pay it in order for it to apply correctly. So that's important. And then the results of your application of payment can be viewed in TSIA-PPL. We will go into detail on TSIA-PPL a little bit later. On a normal basis, this is how this operates. One charge can be paid by more than one payment, and one payment may be used to satisfy more than one charge. So that's the normal breakdown of that. And then once a payment has been applied to a charge, the balance of the payment and the charge are going to reflect the amount that was used. If it was used completely, the balance goes to zero. Then you can view that in TSA-DETL or TSA or TASREV. And remember, TGRA-PPL will ignore any zero balance transactions and process only those whose balance is less than, greater than or less than zero. Okay. So, trying to keep on my my transactions and on my application payment. Okay, online payment versus batch payment. So some of you are probably sitting there going, what in the world does she mean by online application of payments processing? So online application of payments processing is when you're on TASREV and you go to Tools, Apply Transactions. When you do those steps, that is processing what Ellucian calls an online application of payment. When you type TGRA-PPL into the search box and you go to TGRA-PPL and you run TGRA-PPL through job submission, that is called a batch processing or regular processing of your application of payments. The very, very important thing to remember when you're running an online application of payment from TASREV, so when you go to TASREV and you do Tools, Apply Transactions, the process just doesn't automatically function without anything behind it, right? But what it does do is it runs in the background TGRA-PPL. And now some of you are probably thinking, well, how does it run TGRA-PPL in the background when I haven't entered in any parameters? What it does is it goes to your saved parameters. So let me open up my banner and show you what I mean by saved parameters. So there is a difference between regular saved parameters when you do a parameter set and saving your default parameters. So if I go to TGRA PPL, and if I had a parameter set here and I go and I click on this save parameter set and then I click on go, right? That is a parameter set. That is not your saved default. And TGRA PPL does not look at your saved parameter sets when it's running an online application of payment. But when you come here, and let's say I go here. Now, on here, all of these values automatically popped up when I came into the form, right? Those that are listed here without a parameter set, no parameter set has been entered if you notice up here. These are what are called your saved defaults, your user defaults. When you run tools apply transactions from TASREV, the process of TGRA PPL comes here and looks at these values right here, not your parameter set values, but these values right here. If you don't have any saved parameter sets right here, then the next thing that it does is it goes and it looks at GJA PDF and GJA PDFT, which are your system defaults and your transactional defaults. I think it's transactional defaults. So those are generally stored in your system-wide. Most likely it's under your no-sleep user. So if any of you have had to deal with no-sleep user parameters where you're having to change the term and things like that when you're running transcripts and things like that from TASREV, it's in that same spot. It's those saved default parameters that are in there. So as a user, if you don't have any of those, then it's going to go to your defaults, your system defaults. The problem with that is if your system defaults are different from what you would want your user values to be, at another college, this parameter here, apply aid to a future term, the user didn't have any saved values here. And so when it went to their user defaults or their system defaults, this was a Y instead of an N. So it was applying aid to future terms when the user didn't want to. So you just have to make sure if you are a person who regularly runs application of payments and you're regularly running application of payments from your TASREV screen, you have to come to your TGRA PPL process in job submission and you have to save your parameter details. The way that you do that is this. It will not save the student ID, but it will save everything else. So in this particular case, yes, I want to have apply refund to any priority set to an N. I do not want that to ever be a Y because you would not want a refund to be applied to any priority. Same thing with a negative charge being applied to any priority. You would never want that, so you're going to set that to an N. We always have parameter number 4 set to a D for detail code. So you're going based on your detail code priority. We have a Y to process Title IV aid first. We generally have apply aid to a future term set to an N. The only time you would want that changed is if you're specifically trying to apply aid to a future term, okay? And then apply other to future term is the same thing. Other means third-party contracts, all kinds of other stuff. Now, these parameter 6 and parameter 7 in and of themselves may not necessarily cause this to apply to future terms because remember, when you're looking at and comparing this information, it also goes back to your TSA DTC. And if you have like term and like aid year check, it uses that as well to bounce off of. So all of this builds on itself. Then you have your order by term. So generally, most of us are going to have this set to 1, which is order both your payments and your charge by term. But you can change it to where you only are ordering your payment by term, or you're only ordering your charge by term, or you're ordering neither by term. But in general, you want this set to a 1. If you're trying to do something different, then you could adjust this, but most of the time you're going to be at a 1. And then print your application pending roster is generally set to an N so that your report for TGRA PPL is not ginormous. Now, I'm going to make a change here and just say why, just so I can kind of show you how to save your defaults. So if I made this change and I wanted to say, yeah, I always want to apply A to a future term, which we don't want to do, but in this case, I'm going to say, yeah, I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to either alt page down or use this arrow to get down into the submission block. And then I'm going to check this save parameter set as, but I am not going to enter a save parameter. If you enter a name and a description, then you are creating a saved parameter set. You don't want to do that when you're trying to save your defaults. You just want to check this save parameter set as, leave this blank, and then you're either going to hit save or you're going to hit F10 to run the process, which I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Then up here, if you notice, it says saving current parameter values as user level defaults. So now I'm going to click on go again because I don't want to look at my output. But if you noticed, now when I come here, this is still a Y. That is my user defaults. So I'm actually going to change this back to an N. Now, if you ever wanted to save these values and not run the process, all you have to do, come down here, click the box, come over here and click hold, and then click save. What that does is it will save your user defaults, but it will not run whatever process you're trying to run. You can do that on all of the processes for Banner. It just kind of works that way, and all it's doing is saving your defaults. It does give you a sequence number, but it does not run the process. Okay. So I hope that made a whole lot of sense. That's why I said a lot of this is going to be a lot of information packed into a short amount of time. Okay. So user level defaults, super important. That would be my first thing. If you are new to running application of payments, that is the first thing you need to go do is go to TGRA PPL, enter the user defaults that you need, and then save those user defaults. That way, you're always guaranteed that it's going to run the way you want it to. Otherwise, it's going to jump to your system defaults. And those, depending on if you're the person that updates those or if your IT people are the ones that update those, they may get updated once a semester. They may never get updated, depending on your college. And so you could really have some issues with running application of payments if you're allowing it to jump to your system defaults and you're not keeping track of those. Okay. So we talked about up here the priority codes. So it says see the table below. So now we're going to talk about your tables. So payment priority codes for student receivables. So this is how the breakdown goes. The first thing it's going to do, apply Title IV aid. Right? So if you have that Title IV, which we do, we always have Title IV set to a Y on TGRA PPL. It's going to apply your Title IV first. When it's getting to your priority, remember these are just the priority things. This all goes in the same order, but this is the priority order. Then order by term, however you had that parameter set up, right? So you had an option to do 1, 2, 3, or 4. Again, we said stick with 1 for the most part. That's going to be your safest bet on that one, but it orders by first Title IV, then by your term order. Then your third order, it's going to apply based on whether you chose detail codes or contracts, which we do detail codes. And And then your contracts and exemption credits will also be applied using the detail code credits. But again, keep in mind, if that source code is not the same as the original charge, if you're doing reversals and things like that, they may not apply properly. Then your priority of payments in descending order, payment restrictions, then your payment effective date, then your payment transaction numbers. So that's the order in which they apply based off of priorities. Keeps on going. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll let you read all those. Okay, for Title IV processing, this is important. In addition to all of this junk and all of that that's going through here, you know, your charges, institutional the same term, non-institutional the same term, blah, blah, blah. When it goes through here, it also is going to look at Title IV processing for like aid-year rules, okay? So depending on how your college has your detail code set up for your Title IV aid, so Pell, SCOG, that type stuff. Depending on how those set up, if you have like aid-year rules or like term year rules and you have TIV authorizations, it is also going to put into effect your Title IV credits for prior year payments, right? So prior year payments mean anything in a prior year outside of the year that you're paying in can pay up to $200. So if I have a fall, let's just say a fall 2024-12 financial aid Pell. So if I have some Pell sitting out there for 2024-12, and the student still has a balance in the 2023-16 term. 2023-16 is a prior aid year, right? It's a prior year. So if the student has a TIV authorization, then when you run application of payments will automatically put $200 toward that 2023-16 balance. It'll put up to $200, no more than $200, but if the student only owed $100, it would only put $100, right? But the max is $200. And it's associated with that. So make sure that you know that for Title IV processing, there is other rules that are involved, especially when it comes to prior aid year payments. Okay, so this document, if you want to read through it in its entirety, we pretty much went through just about everything. Will be posted on the website, and I will send it out when I send out the link to the recording a little bit later. So that is the order in which you process or application of payments is processed. That is the difference between online payments of application of payments. Goodness. So remember, online application of payments is done off of TASREV by going to Tools and Apply Transactions. Batch application of payments is done by going directly to TGRA PPL and running application of payment. So those are kind of things that work. Okay, so I did run an application of payment already. So let me go to TASREV and let me pull up my little test student that I normally do, but I never write down the name of, or the ID number. I don't know why. I use the same student every time. You think I would have it written down by now. Okay, good. So application payments. So if you remember last time when we did, what were we doing? What was the last one we did? Detail codes? Yes, detail codes. In the detail code training, we put some transactions out onto the student's account. We put some charges, we put some reversals, but we didn't run application of payments because that's what I wanted you guys to show. So this is kind of what we're talking about. So when it says when the balance goes to zero, so if we were to go run application of payments right now, it would ignore all of these transactions that are zero balances, but it would look at all of these transactions that have a balance that is not zero, right? So it would be looking at all of these, this 38, 952, 50, and 105, but it would ignore everything else. That saves on processing time because there's no sense in it, you know, like running and running and running and running over and over and over. So, so let's talk a little bit about how, when application of payment works, how priority codes kind of fall into that category. So payments and charges are detail codes, as we talked about in the detail code training, and those are defined on your TSA DETC screen, and they are either a type of C for charge or P for payment. So let's look at ACTI. So let's go to TSA DETC. Okay, let's look at the ACTI. So we're talking about this type code right here. Okay, so a C or a P is the type that determines the transaction's balance when it's posted to TASREV. So it's either going to be positive or negative. So if it's a C and you're just doing a regular ACTI, you're not reversing it, you're just putting an entry on there, and that's a C, then the balance is going to be a positive balance for whatever the dollar amount is for your ACTI charge, right? So that's what that means. Now, if we were to look at the one ACT, that one has a type of P. So when you are just putting a payment onto the student's account, because it is a P, then that means that the balance will be negative when you enter this, when you put this entry on to the TASREV account. Now, we talked about in the detail codes last time that when a detail code that normally is a type P has a positive balance, then it's a charge, right? So a positive payment is a charge, and a negative charge is a payment, right? So Banner kind of throws it out that way. I have a little chart that I'll pull up over here. Let me pull this up for you. So if we look at it this way, this is kind of how it works. So when a detail code type is a P and the amount posted to the account detail is positive, then it's a payment, right? If it's negative, then it's a charge. Same thing on C. If the detail code type is a C and the amount posted to the account is positive, it's a charge. And when it's negative, it's a payment. So that is it's a kind of an easy way to keep track of how those are, okay? So detail codes also have what we like to call priority codes. So priority codes are these little guys right here. And normally, on a normal basis, now there are always exceptions to this rule, but on a normal basis, in general, you're only going to be changing the priority code of your payment, okay? Because in general, you're usually applying a payment to a charge. Now, again, reversals are what they are, but at the same time, when you're doing reversals, in general, if you're reversing a TUIT, you want that to apply back to the TUIT. You don't want that negative TUIT to apply to something else, because then that's not really reducing your TUIT the way that you wanted it to. So the priority code is a 3-digit code, and that code is set up and created by you on TSA DETC. Now, you want to follow your college's, procedures on how you set up priority codes. But in general, most of your standard fees, like your tuition and your standard fees, are all going to fall in the 900 category. And so it's going to start with a 9, and then it's going to go down. So, you know, you start from 999, 999, 998, 997, 996, 995, and you just keep going down the line. So, so when we talk about priority codes, I'm going to pull this over so that you guys can see it. So when we talk about priority codes, the priority number is very important. And a 0 is a wild card, and it can be pleasant and allow you to apply your transactions exactly to all of these, you know, charge your payments to all of these charges. But at the same time, it can be dangerous because a 0 is a wild card, meaning I can pay whatever I want, right? So at most colleges, I would say, unless your college has changed yours, the DREL, if you use DRELs at your college, your priority code for DREL is probably 000. The reason for that is the DREL, we want to apply and let it apply to any payment that we want it to apply to, right? But when it comes to like Pell, you want to control that a little bit. So Pell, in general, at most colleges, when you're not running application of payments, when you're not cleaning accounts and applying Pell to all of these charges and getting ready for refunds, Pell at most colleges is generally set to 111 or something to where it won't apply to anything, because at most colleges you don't have anything set to 111, right? Because that's a really low priority code. So that's kind of how that works. So if you are sitting here and you have your Pell set at 111 and you say, okay, now I'm ready to take my Pell and apply it to all of my tuition and all of my fees. We normally change ours to 900, and then we run application of payment. We change Pell to 900, we save it, we run application of payment. The reason for that is because if you set this payment to 900, then it will pay anything from 900 to 999. So if it starts with a 9, it'll pay it, because zeros, remember, are wild cards. They can pay anything. I can pay anything. So if it starts with a 9, then it gets paid. Most of our standard fees and our tuition are 9 something, right? So that's always a good thing. Now, when you get into some colleges, and I've seen this at some colleges, they have their bookstore charges set to $825. If you change Pell to 900 and your bookstore charge is an $825, will Pell apply when you run application of payment? No, it won't, right? Because it can pay anything that starts with a 9. Well, 8 is not 9, right? So keep that in mind when you're running application of payment, to know that if you have something that's in a lower range than 900, then you are going to have to change it. So if your bookstore charges are in the 800s, then you may have to change your Pell to 900, run application of payments, then go and change it to 800, and then run application of payments. So you have to be very careful when you guys are setting up priority codes. So priority codes are not, don't be scared of them, but you just kind of have to know how they work. So it's a 3-digit code that's set up on TSA DTC. Your charge and your matching payment should have the same priority code. So if your tuition, so in this case, actually, ACTI, so let's pull this to the side for just a second. So if we filter again, and let's do percent, ACT percent. So if we look at ACTI, has a priority code of 991. Well, so should 1 ACT, 2 ACT, 3 ACT, 4 ACT, and 5 ACT. And then any of your specific ACT detail codes, so ACTI detail codes, your bankruptcy detail codes, your prior year write-off and your current year write-off. All of those should have 991 priorities, because those will automatically apply because we go based on detail codes, right? So like detail codes within the same term with the same priority codes, as long as the priority sequence is valid and matches against that when you're looking at the detail codes. So those should all be the same. So, and then this is how it functions. Any position that's non-zero has to match exactly. So in this particular case, all of these are not non-zeros, so they don't have zeros in them. All of these have to be exactly the same. So if all of these were 991 and let's say your wire payment was 992, guess what? When you run application of payments, it's not going to apply, right, to your ACTI. So keep in mind, so those all have to be the same. A zero in any position is a wild card, which we've talked about that. Wild cards, I can pay whatever I want, right? Payment priorities of 999 are used first. Charge priorities of 999 are paid first. I don't know that any college has anything set to 999. You might, but if you do, and you notice that that always gets paid first, this is why. Whether you want it to or not, that's how it functions. Payment priority of 000 will pay anything. Now, this is a recommendation from Ellucian, right? This is not true for us. So you just ignore this. This is not true for us. Why is it not true for us? Because we have a one-to-one payment. ACTI has its own matching payment codes. So cash, which is what this is, for us, should never be set to 000. Simply because you don't want this ACTI to marry to TCKK, right? Which could possibly be the case if you had it set to 0. We want to control that. So cash should not be set to 0. DREL, yes. Okay if that's set to 000, but not cash. Then it goes on to give you some examples. Like I said before, 900 pays anything from 900 to 999. 420 pays a charge from 420 to 429, right? Because the only wild card here is the last digit, right? So it has to start with a 4. The second digit has to be a 2, but the last digit can be anything. So 420 to 429. 111. We use that for Pell and not for installment plans. This is just an installment plan example that Ellucian gives. But for us, that's generally Pell. 111 can only pay 111, and we don't have anything else set to 111. And so when we run application of payments, Pell doesn't apply until we want it to, right? That's pretty much what it's doing. 100 pays anything from 100 to 199. And then like we said, 000 pays anything. And then, of course, priority codes are overridden when you do a T-pay, okay? So if you do a T-pay or if you have a third party with an invoice number, those override priority detail code of application. Okay. It's a lot. I told you guys it was a lot. I know I know that the agenda did not look like it had a lot, but it does. Okay, so you want to run application of payments before you do your refunds. You want to run application of payments before you do your TGR ages report and your TGR recon report. You want to run application of payment before you do any of your year-end reports. All of that application of payments are very important because they assure that you have accurate reporting and accurate processing of your refunds and things like that. So when we apply transactions, sometimes we have to unapply transactions, right? So when we run unapplication of payment, it too has an online unapplication of payment option and a batch. Same type situation. Your online unapplication of payment is going to come from running it through TSA Rev. Your batch unapplication of payment is going to come through running it through batch. We're going to talk about running it through batch a little bit later because that one can really mess you up. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you some pointers and some what not to do on that as well, and then we'll go from there. So when we talk about unapplication of payments, application of payments, you just come here and you go apply transactions because it is something that happens on the form. Unapplication of payments doesn't happen. It's a different form, so it's under related, right? So if you go to related and you click on unapplication, then it's going to bring up all of the application of payments that have been applied to the student's account. So remember, if it's been applied, it will be here. If it's not been applied, it will not be on TSA UNAP, right? Because it hasn't been applied. So you don't need to unapply it because it has been applied. So there are several ways that you can do unapplication of payment. So here's my general rule of thumb. This is just for me because it makes it easier. You may disagree and you may agree. I don't know. But once a student has refunds, aid, all of that stuff on their account, I never go in unless I have to. I never go in and unapply the full term. The reason for that is because you stand a greater chance of it applying incorrectly when you run application of payment again, or you have to change the priority codes a whole lot in order for it to apply correctly. So after I've run refunds, especially if you're running refunds at the beginning of term, fall semester, all those, and you have a lot of refunds out there, I never usually unapply the entire term. I always just pick the transaction that I want to work with and unapply that transaction only. So if I look at this, and we remember what we talked about in the beginning where we say, in general, application of payments is applying a payment to a charge. In general, that means that you don't unapply a charge, you're unapplying a payment. Now, in the case where the charge is a negative amount, it's then a payment, you can unapply it. But I'm going to try this and see if it does this. Okay, which of course it didn't because that one's a reversal. So if you type in a transaction number, I wonder if it'll do that. And you get a message. I'm trying to make it do the message, but of course everything is going to unapply. There's a message that comes up and says you can't unapply this or something to that effect. You've probably seen it before. Those are the ones that it's a charge. It may be a charge that you're trying to unapply. In general, you're going to want to unapply a payment. So like, for example, if I want to go here and I want to unapply this HO50, right? The transaction number here is 184. So if I type in 184 and I hit F10 and I save it, then your HO50 goes away because it's no longer applied, right? And only items that are applied show in this particular category, okay? So that is one way to do an application payment. The other way is to unapply, just typing in the term code, but it unapplies every single transaction in the term. So again, after refunds are done and you have a whole lot going on in that account, I try not to unapply the entire term unless I have to. Then you have options of like the applied date. So there's an applied date here. So let's see if it'll do this one. So if I do 03/12/2024 and I hit F10, then it's going to unapply all the transactions that were done on March the 12th of 2024. So you can unapply by the apply date. So if you have, I've done that before for a college who ran application payment, said, oh gosh, I didn't want all of this to apply. So we just unapplied the stuff that they applied that day, and we didn't mess with the rest of the stuff because all the rest of the stuff was correct. So that's another option for unapplying. If you have something that, oh, you applied it, shoot, I shouldn't have done that, just unapply that date. If you have a transaction that is T-paid, when you unapply this transaction number, you have to uncheck this box, or check this box and check this box. If you don't, this is for T-paid, this is for direct invoice. If you don't check that box, when you hit F10, it's going to unapply the transaction, but it's not technically going to unapply it. And don't forget that if you're wanting to unapply a T-paid transaction, you have to go back. You have to exit out of here, go back to TASREV, and you have to remove the TransPaid number from this before you reapply in order for it to apply to something other than what is in this T-Pay thing. So don't forget to do that when you're trying to get rid of application of payments. So now if you notice, I have a whole bunch of stuff that I have unapplied. So now I'm just going to go back up and I'm going to run an application of payments because I was just kind of showing you what an online application of payments looks like. So if you do it off of TASREV, that is an online application of payment. Now, I will say, and this is when I'm working with people and we do application of payment, and I'm going to talk about application payment, but I want to talk about TSIA PPL. So TSIA PPL is very, very, very important, and most people may not even realize how important it is when you're trying to figure out what happened, right? So if I ran application of payments and I'm like, I see that my HOPE payment applied, but what did it apply to, right? Now, we could probably look at this and say, oh, it probably applied to this. But you don't know that unless you look. So what we can do is I'm going to write down these transaction numbers just because we're going to go look at it. So if I look at this transaction, that's 189, right? And then if I look at this transaction, that's 184. So we're going to go look and we're going to go see if 189 actually is married to 184, okay? So this is how we can tell. We go to TSIA PPL. TSIA PPL tells you what is married to what for that particular student. So current is generally always going to be selected. Current is generally always what you're going to want to look at, right? You can also change it to all, but that gets a little messy if you have a whole bunch going on. So I would always leave it at current because that's just the way it is. So what this does is this comes up and it looks like this. So when I wrote down those two transaction numbers, 189 and 184, I wrote them down for a reason, because if you're looking at your review form here, I can see that ACTI, the transaction number 200 for the 2023-12 term, is married to the ACTI 191 transaction number charge for the same term, and the amount of that is $50. And then my apply date was today because I unapplied, right? These are ones of the ones I unapplied, and then I reapplied them to there. It goes through every transaction. You can go through every transaction and see what is married to what. Now, you can go through these one by one if you wanted to. And in this particular case, this is what we were coming here to look at. So yes, my guess was correct that the 184 HO50 married to the 189 HO50 for the term for $546.75. But I didn't know that for sure until I came here and looked. It could have very well be applied to something else, right? And so this is where if you apply something and it doesn't apply correctly, it doesn't apply how you're expecting it to, come here and look on this form. This form is very, very helpful. Now, you will need transaction numbers before you come because it does go very much based on transaction numbers, dollar amounts, term codes. So just make sure that you have the transaction numbers written down that you're thinking are issues or that you're having issues with so that you can see what has applied to what. Now, this form also has a filter, and this form has a filter that is kind of strange. So when you filter on this one, the first filter that comes up, if you notice, all of that says payment, 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 payment. So payment detail code, payment transaction code, payment description, payment term, payment aid year, right? So sometimes that's what you want to look at. I want to see what it all is married to H.O.50. So this H.O.50 I know is a payment detail code. I want to know what all is married to it. So if I put in the payment detail code of H.O.50, then it's going to show me that 21 things are married, right? So I can look and I can see that this one is married to this for this term, and then I can look and see that H.O.50 is married to H.O.50 for this term, for that amount. And then we keep going, right? But now we get into the nitty gritty of it where we say, oh, okay, here's the H.O.50 that is married to my tuition. It paid $82.50 in my tuition, right? Here's one that paid $375 of tuition for this particular term. So you just get into the different things. H.O.50 only pays tuition, right? And I don't think this student has Pell. Ooh, yeah, they do. Okay, so if we look at this and we go and we look at the payment detail code for Pell, we have that it's married to a PLRF. So this is the refund. So the PELL is married, so this student got a refund of $791.84, right? But we also see that it's married to a bookstore charge for $359.66. It's married to tuition for $142.50. It's married to a TCKK for $55. So it shows you what all this Pell is married to, but you do have to pay attention to the terms. So this was all 2014-12 or 2012-14, and then we get into 2007-02, right? So that is how that runs. Now, if I want to see, let's look at tuition. If I put tuition in here, let's see what happens when I put tuition here. If I have a reversing tuition charge, or reversing tuition charge, if I have a reversing tuition charge is what? A payment, right? So that payment will pull up in TUIT. And that's why you're seeing these, because these have reversals on them, okay? But I'm trying to think of one that may not have a reversal, but I don't know if it does. I think all of them have a reversal because this is my account that I play with. If you were to put a charge detail code here and there was no reversal, you would not get anything. It would say no records returned. So if you want to specifically look for charge detail codes, you have to go here and add another field. And then if you look, this list is in alphabetical order, just like it is on all the other ones. The charge detail code information is here. So you can then put your charge detail code out here, and you can put in a charge detail code and do searches on that. You can do charge trans numbers. You can do charge terms. You can do, but you have to specifically pick the charge information out of the list, because payment is always going to show up, charge will not. So if you come in here and you put in the detail code and it tells you no records found, and you know that you have a charge that's been applied, and then you go, oh shoot, that's payment. Let me come over here, add another field and do the charge detail code, and then put the charge detail code in there, then click go, and then that will find you all of your charge detail codes, okay? So columns, if we go through the columns, the detail codes, this is just showing you that this payment, which it's a TCKK, so since it's a payment, that means it was a reversal, right? That payment is married to this charge. Here's your transaction numbers. Here's your terms. Here's the dollar amount, the date that it was applied, user ID, and then whether it's been fed or it's ready to be fed, right? So you can see that from here. Your effective date and transaction date are the same things that are on your TASREV account. Then down here, you have direct pay information. So if this was a direct pay, your direct pay information would be here. And if it was archived, it would be here. There's a special process that does archivals, but archives are kind of scary, right? So, okay. So I do have a question in chat that I missed. So let me go back and address that since we're done talking about TSI PPL, and then we'll hit TGR UNAP. Okay, so the question in the chat is, would you be able to cover why the RTS payment comes into Banner as a DWCC? Yes. That is because your priority codes are incorrect. Okay, so that would be fixed on TSA DTC. Okay, when RTS is applying payments, RTS does credit card payments and they do check payments. So let's just pull up ACT again, and we'll just look at this. Okay, so when you look at ACT, the priority code is 991. RTS only applies credit card payments and check payments. So it only applies 3 ACT and 2 ACT. It never does a 1, it never does a 5, okay? 4s are refunds, so it wouldn't, of course it wouldn't do that. But it never does cash and it never does wire. But it does do a 2 and a 3, which is check and credit card. So in this particular case, if let me do this. Let me filter again. I'm going to change this just so that you can see it. So if for some weird reason, which this happens, TCKK is 992. So say we had to change the priority code for 3 TCK, and we changed it back, but we typed it in wrong. So TCKK is now set to 991, okay? So if I now go to the priority and I look up anything that's a 991, this will help us see what I'm talking about. Okay, so ACTI is 991. 2 ACTI is 911, 3 TCK is 991, and 3 ACT is 991. When RTS runs application of payments, it says, okay, I have this receivable that I need to liquidate. Let me get its priority code. So it goes over here and it says, okay, ACTI's priority code is 991, okay? Then it says, what did this student pay with? Oh, this student paid with a credit card. Let's just pretend the student did, right? So then it says, I need to find the payment that corresponds to this that starts with a 3 and has the priority code of 991. Well, guess what? We have 2. Now it doesn't know which credit card number or which credit card detail code to use. So it puts a DWCC out there because it says, I don't know what to do. I'm going to put the payment out here, and then somebody else has got to deal with it. Okay? So DWCCs are put out there because you have an incorrect priority code somewhere. Now, what is hard to find is it's hard to find which one it is. So if you have a DWCC on a student, you need to look at every charge the student has. Then you need to go find what the priority codes are for the charge. Then you need to go look at 3, whatever that charge is or a payment is, and 3, the matching term, and 2, the matching one, and see what those priority codes are. I would be willing to bet you'll find that you have an extra something that was accidentally typed in wrong or something to that effect, and it puts the DWCC out there. DWCCs should never be allowed to remain on the student's account. It should always be reversed, and generally you want to reverse that through a supervisory cashier reversal, but sometimes you don't catch it until the session's closed and you just have to fix it in another session, but then that session needs to be put with the original session that has the DWCC showing that you corrected it. So, so a DWCC needs to be reversed, and then the correct payment needs to be put on the account for the student. But that does have to be done manually because RTS is like, I just don't know which one to pick. I don't know whether to put a 3 ACT or a 3 TCK because they both start with a 3 and they both have a priority code of 991. So that's why you have DWCCs. So if you have a lot of DWCCs, you probably have some priority code issues. If you have onesies and twosies here and there, then you probably do have it, but on less used detail codes, if that makes sense. But if you're constantly getting it, then you really need to do a good analysis of your priority codes for all of your payments for 2s and 3s and match them back to the priority code for the charge and make sure they're all correct. I hope that helped. Okay. On application of payments. Pull this over. This is the document that if you call me and you say, I need to unapply a mass number of students, this is what I'm going to send you, but I'm also going to give you huge like warnings, warning, if I could like send you like one of those boom things, like, what is it, Batman? Was it Batman? That had like boom, bam in the comics. But anyway, so if I could send you one of those, I would. I'm probably going to put that, I need to find that, put that on this paper. But anyway, running mass on application of payment can make a complete and utter mess if you don't run it correctly. Because you could unapply a whole bunch of students that you didn't mean to unapply, or you could apply a whole bunch of junk that you didn't mean to apply. So my first suggestion, recommendation would always be to run TGRU-NAP with a population selection. Never run it wide open without a population selection, because then you're making sure that the students that you want to unapply are the only ones that you're applying, okay? Unapplying. So that pop cell. So I have a population selection called manual, right? Make this bigger. Okay, so I have a population selection called manual. So if you're doing onesies and twosies, like if you're doing maybe 10, I don't know, 10 students, you can make you a manual pop cell and put those 10 in there, manually type those 10 in there, and then use that pop cell in TGRU-NAP. If you have a lot, then you might want to use this registered students population selection. So this one in particular just looks for students that are registered for whatever term code that the user enters that are level 50 or 54, which are credit students only, and whose billing hours are greater than 0. Okay, so if their billing hours are greater than 0 in the registration form, then you know that they're registered, right? So this is a population selection you could use. You may not want to unapply your entire registered students, right? So this is just an example of what you can do. But most of the time, you're probably going to be doing a good chunk of people. Also, if you have a certain population that you can tell us how to find them in Banner, like, I don't know, any student that's registered for a certain CRN, or any student that is in a certain major, or any student that has this particular charge. Those are population selections that you can write, or we can write them for you, and you can use them as well in TGRU-NAP. So first things first, you need a pop cell. Always, always, always use a pop cell. Second thing, before you run TGRU-NAP, even if you have a pop cell, you need to go to this form right here, TSA MUNA, and you need to make sure that it is empty, because that form gets populated. How? I have no idea. I probably should find that out. But somehow this form can get populated with students. And when you run TGR UNAP, even if you run it with a population selection, it is also going to check TSA MUNA and is going to unapply any student that's in there plus the students that's in your population selection. So always, always, always get your population selection together, then go to TSA MUNA and make sure that it is empty so that you're not unapplying students that you're like, why did this student unapply? Because it was a rando that was hanging out in TSA MUNA, which is weird. So you want to do that. You want to get your population selection together. This is, you know, what your population would look like on GLA-XTR. This is what TSA MUNA looks like. You want it to be empty like this. If it's got people in it, delete them, right? So you just need to delete those. But I will say most of the time it is empty, but randos do jump in there from time to time. So just make sure that it's empty. Then you're going to run TGR UNAP with these specific population selections. The only thing that would be different is the name of the population selection, which is parameter 3, and then parameter 5 is your banner ID. And don't type in your creator ID. It is your ID. A. White, T. Moore, right? Whatever your banner ID is. J. Johnson, M. Rhymes, you know, whatever your banner ID is what the creator ID is. So don't enter your creator ID because it won't work if you do. Enter your term, and then parameter 9 is an N. So parameter 1, you're going to put B for both. B for both just means to unapply, just to unapply, okay? Unapply automatically is going to be an N. We don't want unapply and automatically because that applies to like everybody. We're only going to unapply these students right here in this top cell. Creator ID, and then sometimes it'll run without a user ID, sometimes it won't. It's just dependent, so you may have to put, like in this case, Tracy has this, so it's T Moore, and you may have to put T Moore right here. Sometimes you can go without it, sometimes it freaks out. And then parameter 7 is going to be the term code for the student that you're trying to unapply. Whatever term you're trying to unapply is the term code that you're going to put there. Then 8, you leave blank. 9 is an N. Now, if you wanted an output population selection, you could create an output population selection here. That's what 9, 10, and like 11 and 12 are. But you already have the population selection up top, so I don't know that you would ever really use that for anything. I guess you could at some point. But anyway, these are the specific parameters that you need to enter, again, minus parameter number 3 and 5, right? Those will be whatever you're going for in the term. So just trust me on this one. And then review your list and your log files, and then we'll go from there. Then you should be able to go back to the student's account, and any of these students, the entire semester would be unapplied. That is the one bad thing about TGR UNAP is it's the whole term or nothing, right? So you just have to be prepared to maybe do some finagling with your priority codes if you do a mass unapplication of payment. However, having to play around with your priority codes a little bit is a lot better than trying to unapply 200 students that may have gotten unapplied incorrectly manually. You know what I'm saying? So the pro outweighs the con in that particular case. Now, if you have 10 students, it would probably behoove you to just go in and manually unapply those 10 students. If you have 100 or 200 where it's going to take you hours to go into each individual student's account and unapply what you need, this is where TGR UNAP comes into play. So not something I would use on the daily unless you just know for 100% certain your priority codes are on point and everything's going to marry back together perfectly when you run application of payment. So anyway, so there are a few other things that I'm going to include. I'm not really going to go over them in application because we pretty much touched on all the application payment stuff, but there are other items that go into great detail that I have in the documentation. So I'm going to provide that for you all. This is like the basic 101. This is everything you would need to know to run application of payments, unapplication of payments, and to figure out what's going on with application of payments on a daily basis. So that's kind of what I was doing, you know, application of payments 101. Application of payments 101 gets pretty deep, but at the same time, there's also other things that we could talk about, but we don't really want to get too deep in the weeds on it. But I will include that in the documentation, so if you would like to take that and read it, my suggestion for reading times when you're reading the banner manuals and things like that would be if your bedtime is at 10 o'clock, I would start at like 9:30, and by 10 you'll be out cold, right? Either that or you'll be up all night confused. One of the two. Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording to see if we have any questions, and then we'll go from there.